Welcome to All About the Experiences. Today is my 13th episode, so I'm officially a podcasting teenager. I am so very appreciative of the support that I've received from each of you. I am just so inspired by the emails and just the value of topics and also guest suggestions that I've been getting. So I'm really encouraged by that, and it continues to inspire me to bring great content and guests. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Amanda White, Corporate Sales Executive with BMW Performance Center. She shared so many personal insights on what inspired her to pursue a career in the automotive industry, especially as a woman, and provided special experiences on how that she engages her clientele. So I was really excited about that. And especially in the hospitality climate that we're currently in, it was nice and very refreshing to get that different point of view. Thank you also to Amanda and the BMW Performance Center West for sponsoring the amazing driving experience. And I just want you to know that the winner will be announced via social media later today. And if you have not done so yet, you still have time to enter. And just in case you forgot how to enter, all you have to do is go on to, I have two Instagram pages, which is All About the Experiences and also All About the Experiences podcast. Sister's trying to get up her clicks and views, and just like both pages, follow, and then also tag 5 of your homies that are going to definitely fight over who's going to go with you on that experience. So it should be a lot of fun. And I also want you all to continue to share in this excitement, and I encourage you to tune in every week to be inspired by my guests and their amazing stories that they're being so generous with sharing with us all. And just basically talking about inspiration. Today's guest is a true inspiration to me. And when we get into the interview, I'll share with you why. He has a unique practice which incorporates his education and experience as a registered nurse. He has been a nurse for well over 20 plus years. His C-suite resume is extensive, and he has served as a chief nursing officer, a chief operating officer, as well as a chief executive officer. He began his career as an emergency room nurse and was instrumental in developing improvements in patient flow and pediatric outcomes in multiple geographic areas that were riddled with less than favorable outcomes. As an experienced healthcare administrator, he is familiar with healthcare governance, compliance, reimbursement, and legal requirements of opening and operating hospitals and supporting various hospital and clinic programs. So not only can he care for the patients, as we all know and appreciate, especially in the climate that we're currently in, he also is able to ensure that hospital operations remain consistent with patient care. He was instrumental in improving and leading the development of long-term acute care hospital utilization in the United States. He gained his knowledge base receiving his nursing and business degrees from Indiana University. He is active in many professional organizations, including Emergency Nurses Association and American Organization of Nurse Executives. At present, he is the founder and CEO of the Nurses Room, and I cannot wait to learn more about this professional nursing platform geared at improving and supporting the nursing profession. He uses his expertise in nursing and business in the healthcare consultations and nursing education. So he continues this going, whether he's in the boardroom or right there on the floor. He speaks nationally on various topics regarding health policy, healthcare finance and administration, social justice, and governance in nursing. His research interests embody a great deal of subject matter that is so relevant in today's medical, political, and racial climates, including healthcare governance and the racial disparities in nursing education. He is one of the fearless medical professionals who is making a difference, patient-facing and in the boardroom. So without further delay, I welcome Robert Beard to All About the Experiences. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
Good afternoon, Cheryl. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have you on this platform and to be able to find out possibly some things I didn't know yet. So I'm excited to have you here. I have to ask you, I see this piano behind you. Do you play?
I do. I try. I always say. I was fortunate. My parents started me in the third grade, so actually I've been playing since I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Uh, I don't consider myself a novice, but definitely not a wolf gang.
Oh, okay. Well, perhaps we might be able to get you to twinkle the keys. I don't know. Well, we definitely share that. My grandmother always shared with us young ladies in the family that we had to have a talent. And we also had to be able to cook. And so I've mastered definitely cooking, but not so much the piano, but I can appreciate the love and appreciation for music. So
Absolutely.
interesting. I love it. Well, I want to I always say this. I mean, I get right into it, but I think it's always important for people to know how we even know each other. And so, how I'll introduce you is I met you by way of my former boss, but definitely a dear, dear friend to me. And you happen to be her brother, which I have to tell you, during the times that she would mentor me in her office, to keep me out of corrective action, if you will. She would talk about you and talk about all of the amazing things that you've accomplished. And so, even before I had officially met you, I knew a lot about you, and it was very encouraging to me, not only just because I was still trying to find my way and decide what I was going to do. I thought I was going into nursing, but I realized quickly that that was not necessarily my forte. But I also realized that I wanted to be sure that I could help people and I could still be in that fold, if you will. And so, believe it or not, I started off in the intro with saying that you inspired me. And so that's one of the ways that you inspired me. But I think as we got into getting to know each other and having phone conversations or what have you, I quickly was very encouraged because I shared with you, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And you're like, whatever it is, you have to make sure that you educate yourself. And so I appreciate you in definitely fostering that drive in me. And I'm happy to say I followed in your footsteps, so to speak. And I did get my MBA. It was not in finance, but it was in organizational leadership. And I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to really officially thank you for that. But thank you for all of the encouragement in that realm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so happy to be a part and be connected with you in this way.
Thank you. Well, let's get into it. Tell me about what inspired you to even become a nurse.
Well, actually, my sister. So that's the irony behind it. I did want to become a physician. I'll be honest, initially, that was my love. Healthcare, helping people. My father, unfortunately, had a heart attack at 42 years old. And so that really inspired me. I was a young boy, and for your father to go through that at such a young age was very devastating to me. So I always said, never again. If it happened again, Dad, I will be there to save you. And that was just really impactful for me. And so, unfortunately, and this kind of goes into minorities in education, there was just not enough financial resources for my parents and myself. It was 5 siblings, so that's a lot of us, to be able to go to med school. My sister was currently studying nursing.
Right.
And she said, you know what, hey, there's still an opportunity, study, you still can help people. And maybe in the future, you're able to go back to med school. That didn't happen, but actually I am so grateful and thankful because I really see healthcare in a different light, I think, from a nursing perspective. I do have advanced degrees in both nursing and business. And so I may not be a physician in a sense, but I tell you, I think nurses really get to see the patients from start to finish. And physicians is kind of limited on what they really do. They come in and they assess and they're very knowledgeable, but it's very limited. We encompass the social economic, the emotional, the physical, the financial. There's so many things that nurses do. So I'm blessed and I'm appreciative to my sister, as you know, and I'm just grateful that I took this path. I'm very happy with this path.
Well, it definitely suits you very well. And I'd like to say, like, even in my family, we're a family of nurses and family nurse practitioners. And again, I honestly thought that that was going to be the route that I would take because we have so much compassion within our family, and I wanted to be there. Unfortunately, I'm not able to stomach a lot of it, and I wholeheartedly admit that. And I have to share this. I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you, but um, I was on the unit with your sister, and I'm just Lisa Beard, Lewis, and we were on the floor, and I was going into a patient's room because I'm also a notary, and I was going to go notarize some medical documents. And the family was all there, and I guess they wanted to transport the patient out of the bed and into a wheelchair. And so they were doing that, and I may be using the term incorrectly, but the patient had like severe edema of the legs. So there was like a swelling of the legs, and the skin was very taut. And so I guess one of their family members went to kind of adjust their leg in the wheelchair, and the leg hit the wheelchair, and the leg split.
Oh, wow.
And all I can remember hearing is someone saying, "Catch her, catch her." And I'm thinking, someone's going down. Who is it? That someone was me. And
Wow.
so I loved it. Lisa told me, she goes, "Baby, maybe this is not for you."
That's usually a little bit of a sign.
Yes. And so I'm just like, okay. And I'm okay with that. And much like you, I recognize that there's still a way to be, present and accounted for, if you will, in healthcare, and not necessarily be patient facing. And so that's
Absolutely.
how I made my way in through administration, if you will. So yeah, that was my little tidbit when I realized, I'm like, yeah, I can't quite handle this. So, but I applaud all of you nurses, especially right now in the wake of COVID. And I'm sure you've probably seen several things that probably have mimicked this pandemic, probably not on this scale, but how are you shifting in the wake of COVID right now?
That's a hard question to answer. I'm gonna be honest. It's so diverse. It depends on geographically where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
The hotspots versus the non-hotspots.
Certainly.
The resources. I mean, you take a small county hospital versus a large institution like in the city of Chicago. Resources are tenfold.
Right.
Staffing. People forget nurses are people, so they get sick as well. So if you have the patient population that are becoming affected by COVID and are staying home or sick, or the nurses are human beings, they get sick as well. So not only do you have already a shortage because of such an increase of patients that are now coming to the hospital with COVID and some of the things that are manifesting from that, you have nurses that are out. So the nurses that are left are compounded with this issue because now we're short-staffed. We're working in a very, it's not a hostile condition, but it's definitely trying. That PPE is probably increases your temperature by 20, 30 degrees. You're walking 2 or 3 miles a day. Most of the average nurse walks 2 miles a day. So now you add this degree of heat, the stress. It's very hard, it's very complex to say that I can put COVID in a box. But I'll tell you that my colleagues that I see when I hear them talk about it, all they talk about is how can we take care of our patients. We don't worry about, I don't have enough PPE, I'll figure it out. We'll wash it. We'll wear it all week. I don't worry about that. My colleague is sick and I got to take her his load. It's okay. The patient has to be cared for. So when we talk about COVID and we talk about this whole phenomenon, it's a pandemic on the world. And I think people forget that nurses are people. We are part of this. We're not just the people on the front line. We're people that have families that are affected. They have mothers and fathers and sisters and children. And so, yeah, I wish I could give you such an easy answer. Maybe I can call the president and say, this is the answer and this is how we fix it. It is so dynamic. And I think I'm dealing with it as the best I can. My colleagues, I try to support. And that's kind of part of the nursing platform as far as the nurses' room. We need a space that we can come to because I think people forget that we're human too.
Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect segue into the nurses' room. Please tell me what the nurses' room is all about.
So we developed basically a platform. It's really, nursing has probably 50 or more organizations out there. We have plenty of organizations. That's not the problem. The problem is that we're not collectively in collaborating. That it's very segmented and siloed, that you have med-surg nurses, you have ICU nurses, so we have such dynamic, but we're all siloed. This group doesn't know what that group is doing. This group doesn't know what that group is doing. but we all forget in the end, just like being a human being, we're all nurses. And I think that's the problem. So the nurses platform was basically instituted by colleagues so that nurses would have a unifying platform where they can receive mentorship, where they can collaborate, where they can see each other in the same light. That I'm no better being a nurse practitioner or a brand new nurse coming out of college. We also have different people in the group. We have nurse lawyers. So therefore they can get not so much a legal representation, but advice, knowledge, understanding your rights. Many people, especially nurses, we call it that we work for an institution and we're safe. We're not. Many nurses are sued outside of the scope of the practice they're under. There's conflict between a hospital policy and the state. Which do you follow? So it's quite dynamic. So that's really what it is. The nurse room is a unified platform where everyone can come together, from that brand new nurse that has just fresh out of school to that 30-year veteran who's now found him or herself in a conflict with their institution. And so, and I know it sounds, people say, well, it's kind of wide and spread, but that's really what it is. It's just a platform for us to come together and show the value of what we're worth.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And it's interesting you said again, I grew up in a family of nurses. My mom, she retired as a family nurse practitioner. And that was one of the things that I can remember her saying is that at the end of the day, it is about patient care. And that's what was really the driving force behind her career. And much like you, my grandfather, he had a massive heart attack, and he didn't survive, down the road, but she was definitely advocating for his health care all throughout. And I can remember her and my aunts and my grandmother sitting around the dining room table and talking like, at the end of the day, this is about his care. I don't care about insurance. I don't care about this or that. I mean, obviously it plays a part, but her main thing was advocating to make sure that he was getting the care that he needed. And that was so very important. And even now, I mean, I've had my own healthcare, situations, and I've been so fortunate that I do have family members that are in my family that will advocate on my behalf, but, not everybody is afforded that. So to hear that you have this platform that is available to nurses, and I love that you start off highlighting nurses are people too. And I know my sister, she's emergency room nurse, and in the wake of COVID, she was concerned. They ended up putting her in a hotel because here it is, she's working, 16 to 18 hours sometimes, and not wanting to bring that home to her family. And
Absolutely.
people forget that, and that's the reason why I say you guys are angels for sure.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that so much. And the financial burden of it. I mean, kind of talk a little bit more about that. That's really an important thing about nursing as well. We're just, people want to talk about money like that's an ugly thing. But we have families. We have to support our families like any other profession out there. And so it's always kind of a taboo when nurses talk about, well, we won't, well, now you chose this to, absolutely chose to help. But we must help ourselves as well. We must make sure that our children have good education, that we able to have insurance of that nature. So, it's interesting you talk about your sister in a hotel room. Think about the nurses in the COVID units. There's nurses that work in COVID patients every single day. They haven't seen their family in months. Right. Think about the emotional toll that takes, that I can't see my child because my fear is that I will contract this to them. Right. And so it's just such a whirlwind of things. And don't get me wrong, there are some hospitals and companies that have done a phenomenal job. They have supported their staff. They provided much more than PPE, but those who haven't. And that's why I talk about the dichotomy of it, that you take a social deprived area and you take that community hospital, it will not be the same as that Northwestern University or that New York State Hospital. It won't be the same. So that nurse, along with that patient, are all compromised even more. And I just really wish as a country, they can understand that the government has to step in to help. Some states, they do best they can, but we're always focused on the large areas, the large cities, the large population. What about that 50,000 person city with the one community hospital and that group of nurses that can't go home or live in their basements or live in their garages because they're fearful that they're going to affect their mother or their father? And so I just really, the platform is also a place just for nurses to talk so that we can share our experiences and support one another. nursing is the largest group in healthcare.
Yeah.
Yet still, I don't think we are treated as the largest. I don't think we're treated. You can't operate any institution without a nurse. You can operate without a physician. You can operate with a lot of support staff. I'm not saying there are any less, but there is no health institution, a clinic, doctor's office. You must have some form of a nurse.
Absolutely. And it's, to me, it's one of the most selfless professions that is there. I mean, you're there because you want to be there.
Absolutely.
And when going back, I'm all about speaking about money, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we do. We work so that we can sustain our families. But I think it's really important to realize that, I mean, anybody that has, educated themselves beyond a high school diploma knows that there is a financial investment that comes along with, you furthering your education. And then especially when you get into specialized degrees, and I know that nursing is no different. In fact, not only do you have, what you're investing in as far as getting your degree, but also certifications and licensure and everything like that. So does your platform also kind of speak to those things as far as continuing education and possibly working with other associations, if you will, to help nurses kind of fund those things or find, because I know I can remember my mom looking for, she always waited to, I can say this now, she's no longer here, but she would always wait until the last minute to get those last CEUs and everything in towards her license. Does that platform also speak to those things as well?
Actually, I'll give you really the premise. It's really 4 major buckets. And of course, they stem in other areas. But our 4 major buckets that we look at is, 4 major rooms, shall I say. So this is nurse's room. Right. It's financial. So not only about talking about your worth, but also helping nurses to invest. Teach them more about the stock market. Teach them more about insurance. So all things financial, not just specifically about a nurse, but things to make them, since it's not a highly paid profession, so they can have a better life. So we talk about, so that's one room, is the financial aspect of it.
Okay.
Second area is health and wellness. We have to be healthy. That's just a big thing. Nurses work a lot of long hours. And what do? We eat bad. We eat on the run. I worked ER many, many years. I can tell you how many times I didn't have a lunch, that I worked 12 hours without nothing to eat, or, a bag of chips out the vending machine, or a soda pop, all the bad things, because we're there caring for our patients. We don't want to leave them. Right. The third segment is education. So all of nursing is changing, is evolving. And I don't know if people know about the history of nursing, but really the diploma nurse was kind of the beginning. And so, after the wars, most men were at war or they died. And so therefore they needed the support, and women needed to make money. So therefore nursing kind of diploma came. And so they were taught within the hospital itself. And so nurses evolved to an associate degree, and now to a baccalaureate and master and so on. But what you're seeing evolve is that the diploma and associate degree is going away. So many nurses that don't have those advanced degrees, they're kind of challenged right now. So we help them as well. We have educators, we have deans of schools that talk about the right path for you. Everyone has a different path, but it talks about the path for you. And the last is truly just support. And whatever that means for you, it is such a wide open complex that we talk about. Maybe you just want to talk to someone. Maybe you need a mentor. So support is just what it means. It's support for all nurses. So those are the kind of 4 rooms that we say that the nurse room is all about.
So as a nurse, and I'm not speaking of me personally, but if there was a nurse who was interested and they're here in California, because that's where I am, in San Diego, how would they become a part of this amazing network of nurses?
Right. So like I said, we've just kind of really launched recently, but we do have a website. Our website is nursesroom with an S.com. So you go to our website, and right now it's free, because we want everyone to see what we're about. So, we have some limited information right now, but we have some speakers coming up soon. Actually, our legal department, which is a phenomenal woman, and I actually just would love you to meet her. She is a nurse executive. She's a nurse practitioner. She's a lawyer, and currently she's completing her PhD. But it's all about nursing, all about supporting them. So she'll be one of the guests and one of the people that will provide, and like I said, we have to be very careful, not advice, but education about legal aspects of nursing.
Okay.
So that is it. So like I said, our website is nurseswithanSroom.com. You can also look at our Instagram. That's kind of where we're kind of putting what we're kind of starting and doing and developing. So that's the Nurses Room as well. So Instagram.
Awesome.
So those kind of the two areas. And then our email address is nurseswithanSroom1@gmail.com. So those are our kind of our three areas that you can communicate with us. On the website is where you will find the application itself, and you fill it out. But right now, they don't have to do that. It is free because we want to encourage everyone to look and see what we provide before we talk about. And the money is really just to sustain it. It's just to cover the, there's costs when you have a website and things of that nature. So it's truly, the cost will be minimal because it's really about what we can provide for the nurses and give us that support.
And that's so important. I will make sure that all of that information is also posted on my platforms and making sure that they have a link to you. When I think about just watching the different members of my family that are nurses and how one of the biggest things I can remember hearing, because, I don't know what it is about nurses, but you all love when we're at the dining room table, sitting around talking about different things. And I the squeamish one in the group, I'm like, I can't handle this. I'm going to go wash dishes now. But one of the things that I'm so glad that I was privy to a lot of those conversations was the lack of support. And especially, obviously I'm come from an African-American family, was the lack of support for African-American nurses. And I know that that is something that you were working towards making sure that those disparities in education are addressed. And so aside from the nurses room, what are some of the things that you actively do just in your day-to-day that kind of combat that issue, if you will?
Sure. So it's kind of twofold. So I do have a business partner. And the nice part about it, we kind of are in two different generations. So he's much younger than me. So he gets to see the nurses from his perspective, the kind of newer grads and what challenges they've had, because 25 years ago it was different for me. So I think it was 3 African Americans in a class of 80, so very small, and only 2 made it. And so they had a lot of challenges. There were a lot of feelings of unfairness and not treated equally. I'll give you a good example. When I had OB rotation. And I'm sure part of it is being a man, but I'm still a nurse, that no women would allow the black man. They would allow the white men to go into the OB areas, but wouldn't allow me. So I had no OB experience because that one can't come in. So what we've done is that we definitely mentor. We look, so there are a couple of schools in the area. Alma Mater is one, is that we look for anyone who wants to be supported. That's number one. We don't want to feel like we're not inclusive. Anyone that wants to be supported, we'll support. But unfortunately, people of same color usually gravitate to the same thing. That is just true. So most of our mentors are young black men and young black women. We do have a few Hispanic that have come along, and then we mentor them as well. And something else that we do is that food banks. We think that a nurse is living large, but a nursing student, sometimes they have to quit their job. And so we actually partnered with a group in Chicago for a food bank for everyone during COVID, but also found there was a great need for kids in college and a great need for kids in nursing school. So we found these kids at some of the local colleges. Chicago has a great network of colleges for kids, and they were hungry. So we found them at the food bank. We found that, they said, we had our shirt on. Oh, you're a nurse. I'm going to school to be a nurse. But unfortunately, I had to quit my job because, the restraints of the rigorous of the schooling. And I don't have enough money to eat. So we actually start to mentor some of those, as well as talk about some financial, trying to set them up with some jobs that may be part-time or PRN that could not affect their schooling, but also could generate some income. So those are really the 2 areas that we've been focusing as far as the mentoring at some of the local colleges. And I guess that's mentoring, but also providing some assistance for those who don't have jobs right now that are currently trying to pursue their nursing career.
That is amazing. And those are the things that you don't think about. I struggled as a college student, and I already had a family, so it's a little bit different set of circumstances, but still you don't necessarily think about that, and you don't want those potential amazing nurses to lose their way because they don't have a meal or they're struggling in some other way. I wish there was a way that you could adopt a nurse, if you will, through a program. Maybe that is something that can come in the near future, because yeah, I can remember my mom. I mean, she was a single parent. She challenged her LVN and her RN, believe it or not. And then she went to UC Davis for her FNP. But one of the things I do recall is that she didn't have the option of not having a job. So there were many times that she did work doubles or she picked up weekend shifts. And I even remember at the time I was like thinking like, well, why do we have to go live with my grandma? Which was not a bad thing because we were getting good meals. I did not miss a meal, trust me. But she was a traveling nurse as well. And even with that, the cost that comes with making sure that you have licensure in that state that you're going to, and it was a lot. And I wish I would have had this opportunity and this platform while she was still here, because I was so proud, so very proud of who she was, just not only as a mom, but as a nurse. And it's so honorable, when you know that someone is really taking your care into consideration. And like you said, sticking by that bedside, even if that means I'm not getting a meal, and making sure that I have that proper care. So that really means a lot. And just thank you for your service in that regard too.
And I think we forget that many students are single moms. I mean, as you said, they already have a family, they already have children. Yeah. So and now that with the pandemic, kids are at home. I mean, there's just layers and layers. So now I have to go to work. My kids are not in school. They're home by themselves. They're latchkey kids at 5 years old now, 6 years old. We were younger. I know I was a latchkey kid at about 10, and I thought that was scary, but the 5-year-olds now, 6-year-old, she has to work. She has to work to provide for them. So, there's just so many layers that are peeled back. And I think we forget about that because all we see is that we need that nurse to be there because we're sick and someone needs to be there. I gave a colleague an example one day. I had brought in on a employee. It was a non-nurse, but it was an excellent employee. And she wanted to talk about, her rights. And she said, my parents were sick and I have to call off a lot. It is what it is. I have to cough a lot. And I said, I totally understand. I said, but I want you to give it some perspective. I said, you take your parents to the emergency room a lot, and that's fine. And then they have chronic illnesses, and I totally understand that you must care for your patients. I said, when you get there one day, I want you to think this. If it was empty and there was no nurses there, what would you say to yourself? And you'd say, that's ridiculous because the nurses have chosen to do this profession and need to be there. But remember, as I said in the beginning, we are human too. They have a mother, they have a father, they have children. And so I think people forget that. And I really, really want to bring that to the forefront. People forget that. They expect us to say, weather the storm, be at work, don't miss a beat, and work short, deal with COVID. But no one steps back and say, I won't say no one. Let me clarify, because there's been a lot of great support out there, restaurants of that nature. But overall, as a profession itself and the way the professional community treats us, no one steps back and says, wow, we forget. They're human too. Absolutely. And really, that just kind of really brings back, I want us to have that support. And the nurse room is really all about that. I want people to be able to cry. I want people to say that I am hungry, that I've worked every shift, but I can't work as much because I got to be home with my children now because they are not in class. My parents are sick and I'm afraid, so therefore I had to pay for a hotel. So I want a place where nurses can feel safe and say, it's hard and it's okay. It's okay, we're gonna be there for you. And so that's really what it's all about. And I speak to that wholeheartedly because I still work clinically. I know people think, oh, you're an office guy, you sit in the office and you put your nice suits on and you're eating fruit. No, because I think you can't lead people if you don't do what they do. How can I tell someone that needs to be done quicker, that needs to be done faster, that needs to be done cheaper if I can't do it? I tell the team all the time, I've worked in many, many roles, and they'll see me and they're like, who is that with scrubs on? And they'll say, oh my God, that's the director of so-and-so. That's the CFO of so-and-so. They'd be like, the COO has scrubs on? Absolutely. Because I need to understand what you do. I need to understand what your challenges are. And I'll just tell any leader out there, you cannot lead people if you can't follow first. And so you gotta be able to follow first. And so I go out and I don't take charge. I take staff. I let them lead so they can understand and then I can mentor you. This is how we can do it better. This is how we can be successful. This is how we can help our patients more, better. Yes, there's a financial with anything. Hospitals are businesses. I totally understand that. I have been on both sides of the coin, and you're right. You can't operate, the lights can't be on if we don't make any money. So, I do remind my staff that we have to have the surgeries. We have to have the physicians. They are important. They bring us the revenue. But in the end, we must take care of our patients. That should be our first and foremost, and we'll deal with the rest later.
Absolutely.
But must follow before you can lead.
I love that. And I hope that resonates to all of my listeners today, because it's so true. And like I said in the beginning, I worked under Lisa, your sister, and I don't know if it started in the family where you all think in that in terms of, making sure that you are right there along with your staff. And she was definitely a proponent of that as well. And I learned a lot about leadership from her, and of course from you. And so that definitely rings a bell right there for sure. Let me ask you, how are you managing that work-life balance with all that's going on? I mean, you wear multiple hats. So how do you manage all of this?
You know what? First of all, faith. I am a faith-based man, and so I believe that you must have faith.
Absolutely.
Because he will not put anything before me that I cannot handle. So that's the first thing I remember. If it's there, apparently it needs to be done. So that's how I think about it. Secondly, as I told the colleague before, those patients need us. They didn't ask to be sick. They didn't ask for the accident. They didn't ask to get COVID. They're sick. And so I have pledged that I will be there in whatever capacity may be. And I know many people say, oh, he's saying that with all these titles, CFO. No, as I said, change beds, clean the backsides, whatever it takes so that we all can get to the goal, which is taking care of our patients the best we can. So how do I balance it? I really don't know. I think sometimes it's an autopilot that I know that I'm thankful when I wake up in the morning. So that's the first thing. And then from that point on, until I am done, until the job is done, until I have nothing left. And that's how I do it, and I encourage others, because some people fall. Some people have a hard time seeing the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it's like, I can't do another day. I can't work another shift. I can't stay over. I can't. And it's okay. Because you know what? Back to support. Somebody will step up for you. But tomorrow you'll step up for them. And that's how we're going to do it. We got to do it collaboratively. We have to work together.
For sure.
A chain is only strong as its weakest link, as they say. And so that person, they're not weak. It's just that they're pushed to the brink. So we need to pull together to make that chain strong again. And if we don't do that, we'll fall apart.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Let me ask you, I know a lot of times even when I was we were in a progressive care unit, and we had our nurse educator that would go around and a lot of times, I don't know if it's like this in every hospital, but you'd have that set aside time where you would have your education piece. And we were slammed a lot of times. And so what our nurse educator was just like, I'll meet you right there by the bedside and we'll get these marked off for you. Do you find that now in the realm of nursing, not just with COVID, but I mean, obviously it's still important to make sure that you're getting those education hours in, that people are being a lot more flexible when it comes to the education component, outside of the continuing education piece that you may go to when you're in a conference or, sitting on a webinar, because now everything is webinars, as you can see.
Absolutely. Well, you have to be. We are tasked with doing more with less, and that's everyone. So I'm not here to say, oh, poor is me. That is the world we're in right now. The expectation is to do more with less. With COVID compounding, now hospitals are even fuller or at more capacity than ever been before. So the education component doesn't stop. You're right. So we have to, as they say, meet them where they are. We have to meet them where they are, and that may be the educator standing in the back and watch you do it, and then say, "Oh, well, I checked you off from doing it." And the good part about it, it's actually, to me, that's a better way of doing it. Many times when you go to a classroom, you lose the perspective because that patient's not really there. It's a mannequin, it's a dummy. But to truly be observed, caring for that patient, looking at all the aspects of nursing, the dummy can't talk. So when Ms. Smith says, oh, baby, can you get me some water? That dummy can't say that. How do you deal with that? Well, I'm changing your Foley. Well, baby, how do you deal with that social part of that? She's 80 years old. She's elderly. How important is that? She doesn't understand about her Foley. She knows that she's thirsty. How did the nurse deal with that? How do they interact with that? So I think the educators got a really a benefit because they can see how nurses deal with the patient as a whole, holistically. And we forget that sometimes. They're very skillful. I know I've met very skillful people. Oh, bam. Oh my God. You just know straight A's, everything else.
Right.
Has zero bedside manner. It's like physicians you hear about. Oh my God, he's the greatest surgeon in life. He has zero bedside manner. And how does it make you feel? Doesn't matter how great a surgeon he is, you say to yourself, I'm worried, I'm fearful because I don't feel this connection. I don't feel this care. I'm a slab of meat on the cold table. The same with nurses, that patients want to feel that there's a compassion component there, that you have empathy there, that you can see them as your mother or father or brother or sister. So I think the education component actually has been a benefit for us having to be forced to meet nurses where they are, and that's at that bedside.
So true. That is so, I think about my own experiences being where I've had surgery and been there, and I can thank God my mama was there. She was just like, and you know, she knew how, because I think sometimes nurses do get caught up and they're trying to make sure, and especially when your patient load is more than what you anticipated when you came in.
Sure.
But I can remember her when I went in for my hysterectomy for ovarian cancer. And it was interesting because she was just like, she stopped the nurse and she was asking her questions, but she was walking with her as she was kind of asking her. And so I know the nurse was probably like, why is this woman? And she goes, well, obviously she says, let me just say this. That's my baby in there. And she's scared and she's hurting and she's not understanding what's coming next with regards to, and I was asking, obviously she wasn't the oncology nurse, but I was asking questions that probably should have been directed towards the oncology nurse. And so she was just like, I don't know. And so my mom was just like, this is how I would have, I was like, so now she's the nurse educator during but I love that because at the end of the day, they ended up exchanging information and they became friends, you know, and she even came when my mom passed away in 2015, she came to her services. But what that spoke to me was that you're always going to have an opportunity for learning, but also there's also an opportunity, like you said, for empathy. And seeing my mom do that with her kind of, you know, definitely ease some of my anxiety, but I'm sure it was able to help mentor her through that process. And I'm sure she's a better nurse as a result of it, you know, so.
And, you know, you find, I think sometimes, and you made a good point, is that you're right. You get in their workload is very heavy, and we sometimes become automatic in that, you know, I have to get this done, I have these tasks to do. And sometimes it takes that. The patients remind us, or family needs to remind us that that's my loved one there. That's my number one. And so I know you're busy and I appreciate that and all you do, but this is my number one. And we have to remember that everyone is someone's number one. Everyone's someone's number one. And so, and I'm just as guilty. I don't want to say I'm this super nurse, whatever. I've had my moments and, you know, you have patients in the hallway and it's chaotic. And sometimes you need that one person to remind you that, come on now, let's get back to what we are. Let's get back to this humanity to what we do. And so that's just really important. So, you know, I'm just really excited. The nurses room really kind of formed from that reason. I mean, I've been successful. And so I moved up the ladder, but I think about my colleagues. I think about the new one. I think about the people behind me, before me and after me. And so I really want to have something to say, when I leave this earth, I've provided something. I left something that left a positive impact on the nursing profession. Love LPNs. I love my pharmacy techs. I love everyone.
Right.
I'm a nurse. And so I understand, that's what I understand. I understand nursing and being a male nurse, being a Black male nurse. Let me just break it down totally. Right. Being a Black male nurse, we are the smallest, pretty much, the population. Even Asians are really trending faster than we are in nursing. And I'm sure you see that in California, it's just such a melting pot. But even in certain areas like New York, some of the Midwest, we are still not moving forward as fast as we should. I mean,
yeah,
African Americans only encompass about 9%. 9.5, I think, was the last statistic of nurses. That's really a small number when you have over 3 million nurses in the United States. We're 9%. That's pretty small. And Black male nurses is about 10% of that. So, you know, it's still a stigma out there, and it shouldn't be. Because I tell you, I think I'm as man as they make them. So, you know, it's a great profession. and my patients respect me. I just share with you a story, which I thought was the cutest thing in the world. A little girl was 3, and I worked in the emergency room locally. And at that time, we could do stitches. So she had a little gash above her head, and so I did stitches. And the mom was there. Mom was a relatively young mom, probably maybe a couple years younger than me. And the grandmother was there. So the grandmother was like, "Oh, are you the doctor?" I said, "No, I'm a nurse." She's like, "Oh, she's single." I said, "Well, unfortunately, I'm focused on the baby. She's crying, she's here." I said, "Let's focus on the baby." So no, very good conversation, great family. I was invited to a wedding 15 years later in the Cayman Islands. So I was at the airport, and we're at the airport waiting, and a girl, and I just, this is the truth. I put on your show and tell you this. She said, "Mommy, that's the man that put my stitches in."
Oh my goodness.
Come to find out, I had mutual friends. We're going to the same wedding. So we had mutual friends, and she remember she was 18 years old and recalled. I said, "Well, I tell you, young lady, it looks pretty good." I would give myself a little pat.
You're like, I did good.
It's very little scar, very attractive young lady. So yeah, just that melted my heart to see something. Like I said, nurses get to see it from the beginning to the end. So I saw the traumatized child. I saw the family dynamics. I was able to comfort her. I was able to fix the problem and to see her as a young lady. That was just amazing. It just melted my heart to know that I was part of that. It may seem simple to most people, but that child doesn't have a vicious scar. Someone didn't care, just threw it together and said, "Oh, okay, you'll be okay." Right. Beautiful young lady. So yeah, those are the type of experiences that really make me happy and make me fulfilled as being a nurse.
Absolutely. I want to go back to something that you started talking about, and being not only a male nurse, but an African-American male nurse. And it's always, I guess, difficult for some to touch on things that involve race, especially with the racial climate that's currently going on. But I've actually witnessed that firsthand, where a patient will literally refuse to, have a nurse take care of them because, and you can ask them and they're like, "Well, why? Was there a problem with the service or the care that was rendered? I just don't like them because they're Black." And I've heard that. And I've heard that here in California, which I thought was, the land of, the melting pot, if you will. And so in a situation like that, and let's say the patient loads, or let's say you're in ICU and it's 3-to-1 or something like that, how do you kind of work around that? Does someone else do you swap patients with someone or another nurse? And also, how does that make you feel inside? Obviously, I mean, not good, but like, how do you just take it as that's just how they feel and go on about it? Or do you try to reason with that patient, or do you just absolutely just leave it alone?
Well, first of all, I think everyone has a right. You're right. We're in a very tricky climate right now as far as our racial relations out there. Mm-hmm. But that's basically that's right. Just like being a male, I always ask my female patients, "Are you okay?" That's the first thing when I come in the door. "I'm Robert. I'll be your nurse today. Are you comfortable with a male nurse?" I say that for her safety as well as mine, because I don't want anyone to say, "I felt odd the way he touched me," because I'm going to touch her like a female nurse would touch her.
Right.
Whatever part of the body is being affected, if I need to do an assessment, I assess the whole body. So I do that for the patient's modesty that may be, and it's for my safety, because I asked and offered that. It's the same as being, you have a right. Your bigotry, your racism, whatever you feel, you have a right. And so if you don't want all this expertise that I have to provide, I look at it the other way. If you don't want all these years of experience, if you don't want that I'm actually the top guy up in here, it's okay with me. You have that right. Whoever's in charge, or if I'm in charge, hey, we got to do a little swap. The patient is requesting. It would be the same way if they're requesting a female versus a male. I don't take it personal, because let's say I prefer a female doctor over a male doctor. May not be just maybe my comfort level. So I give them that right. Patients have the right. So we need to get up our feelings and say, he or she has a right. That's the first thing, and that's the only thing. Now, when I was a young nurse, different story. It was kind of like, hey, I'm just as good. I'm the greatest.
Right.
It was a different climate then as well. But I tell you what hurts me the most. This is really what hurts me. And it's ironic you brought that up, because I still remember this to this day. And this was probably maybe 12 years ago. And I was working in an emergency room, just kind of some PRN on the side in a predominantly white area, very, very prestigious area. And I had a young lady, a Black lady that was a patient. And she wanted an IV. I had to start an IV on her. And so she wanted to tell me where to go. I always say, well, unfortunately, let me be the expert and let me assess, and I will put it in the most appropriate place based on your body. Oh, you don't know what you're doing. I can just tell already you don't know what you're doing. I said, no, let me assess it. You know what? You can't put it in my hand. You only put it here. I said, try to educate the patient. That's not the most effective. You don't start there. You start at the bottom and work your way up.
Right.
You know what? Well, give me a white nurse.
Oh.
And now that kind of went to my soul for a little bit.
Yeah.
It did. I was like, wow. I really didn't know how to respond to it for a moment. I was just in awe for a moment. So I went and got the charge nurse. I was like, hey, patient X wants a white nurse. And she looks at me and says, excuse me? She asked for a white nurse. So she escorted me back to the patient's Bay Area, the ER. And she said, I'm the charge nurse. I wanted to clarify, Robert's very experienced. He don't know what he's doing. Give me a white nurse, somebody to know what they're doing.
Wow.
So she found, and I won't say what hospital, but she found the newest one she could find in the hospital. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't to hurt anybody, but we wanted to make a point that don't judge the book by its cover in a sense. So she got the nurse and said, here you go. This is Molly, whoever it may be. And Molly tore that woman's arm up so bad, and I feel bad for that woman. And so and then the charge nurse came and no one could get her. And finally, after about 5 or 6 sticks, they said, well, ma'am, I'm gonna be honest, probably the most seasoned person in the room is him. And she had to swallow her pride for a moment, or whatever the problem may be, so that I can go in and say, boop, and get her that one-time thing. But it hurt me because I know she had a son or a brother or someone that looked like me. And to say that my value was less because of the color of my skin, which is the same as yours, ask me, what did you think about your own? And I always go back to that as us being people and being humans. I look like you. Your brother looks like me. Your cousin looks like me. And so that, to me, she's hurting inside. There's a lack of pride for herself. Right. So once I dealt with that and said, it's not about me, it's about her. And so whatever it is bothering her. But I was actually happy that I was able to stick her one time, provide that service, and provide that care that she needed, because she had the problem, not me. And that's how I deal with it. Yeah, did it hurt me initially? Absolutely. But we go back to, it's a patient, and a patient has their rights. They have their rights, and I'm okay with them having their right. Whether it be wrong, whether it be morally incorrect, it's their right. And I'm okay with it because it didn't impede on anyone else.
Wow. That is definitely something that will resonate, I'm sure, not only with me, but the listeners. And really important to do not judge a book by its cover. You never know what you're going to. Life is like a box of chocolates, literally. Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. What all that you give, and obviously you have expertise, and you're taking care of patients, and you're taking care of the business side of the house, and you have a lot of energy that's coming out and you're giving to so many. What do you do to fill your tank?
It's behind me. So I do. That is a relaxation for me. So I do play a little bit. That is a solace for me. But I'll be honest, I am grateful. And so that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what helps me rest at night. And you're right, I'm in the office a lot, but people will forget that. That's why I continue to go out on the floor. That's why I continue to do PRN. I have to have that. I need it. So that's what they give me. When I save a life, when that 55-year-old husband with children who are crying because he's had a massive heart attack, and the team comes together and we save him, that's what gives me a sense of pause. That's what gives me a sense of admiration. So to be able to provide, to be able to help save lives, to be a part of a great profession as nursing is, all those things, that's all I need.
I love it. Well, this has been so wonderful. We're closing down, but I have to tell you, I am so inspired by all the things that you shared with us. I'm inspired by the nurses' room. I know how important something like this would have been when my mom was still nursing. And like again, at the end of the day, it's all about supporting each other, whether you're a nurse or not. But I think specifically, not just because this is what we're talking about today, our nurses, they're human too, and they're giving so much of themselves. It's important for us to make sure that they have something that they can connect, like you said, and collaborate and have that support system in place. Because let's face it, it's a thankless profession more often than not. And so, again, I can't thank you enough for just being who you are as a nurse, but also as a dear friend of mine too. And coming to my platform and sharing all of the wonderful things that you're doing, and also giving these awesome stories to go along with it has been fantastic. I want to ask you, is there anybody that you'd like to give a special accolade to?
Well, you mentioned it. My sister has been definitely important to me, so I definitely want to thank her being a fellow nurse. I want to thank all my fellow nurses out there as well. My business partner, and actually you should have him on. He's a nurse as well. So AJ Lowe is a
Absolutely.
cardiothoracic nurse. So yeah, he's definitely a good rock. So I can see things from a different perspective. And you've been a great friend. You've been a great, you've been a mentor for me. I don't think you realize that, but I've learned a lot from you as well. So I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you, Robert, just again, for the difference that you make in healthcare and making things better. And for those that are braving the front lines in the wake of COVID, we thank you so much. COVID is just one of the myriad of things that you all deal with. I mean, I'm sure you're dealing with other things. People are breaking legs and, whatnot. But it definitely, just the selflessness of your profession is amazing. And more importantly, thank you for being a good friend. And again, I started off the podcast with saying you were such an inspiration to me. You challenged me. I'll never forget one day, I think you called for your sister. As you can see, I'm a chatty Cathy. And I was working on in between, like breaks or whatnot, working on a paper. And you're like, sure, send it to me. I'll take a look at it. And much like a good instructor will do, we'll mark it up. And you did. And I was very appreciative of that. But what that showed me in that instance is that it doesn't matter where you are, who you are. The fact is that you saw someone who had potential and you wanted to see them succeed. And so we all got here on the shoulders of someone. And so I thank you for providing your shoulders in those instances. I really appreciate it. As we close out, I always like to tell everyone, it's really important that, we take care of each other and check in with each other. And I see this on the internet all the time. Check on your strong friends. And it's true, because we're burdening a lot right now, but it's also really important that you take care of yourself and you have that self-care. So I want to say thank you again for coming on this platform and sharing all these wonderful stories and telling us all about the nurses room. And I definitely look forward to connecting with your business partner and hearing more about what you all are doing. And in the future, if there's something that we can do to contribute, certainly want to know about it. So thank you again. And I look forward to continuing the conversation at a later date.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Right. Have a great day.